Perfect. Thank you. So over the course of today's session, we will be providing information about the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, which is being led by the California Department of Transportation. This includes an overview of the initiative, the partners supporting the effort, Caltrans's role, and to take questions as well. And as we get started, I would like to cover a few logistics. As previously mentioned, today's session will be recorded. It, along with the presentation, will be made available afterwards. I would like to remind panelists and presenters to please be sure to set your settings on mute if you're not speaking. If you have questions, we ask that you please use the Q&A box, and that can be found at the bottom center left of your screen. So please post any questions you might have. There will be also opportunities throughout today's various presentations to ask questions. At these times, we would ask that you raise your hand, and you will be able to unmute and ask your question when we call on you. To share opening remarks, we are pleased to be joined by a number of folks. And as we get ready to go through that welcome, we're going to start with the welcome. We will go through an overview of Broadband for All, provide an overview of the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, including the network itself and its purpose. We will talk about the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, the project delivery, the design options, the strategies for avoidance. We will also have a presentation on environmental and cultural focus. This looks coordination and tools for communication, project level consultation. We will have an overview of last mile connections, and then we will have an additional Q&A and final discussion. With each of these presentations, there will be Q&A at the conclusion of that presentation. So we won't all need to wait till that final Q&A towards the end. And as we jump into our opening and welcome, we're pleased to be joined by the Secretary of the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs, the Director of the California Department of Technology, the Director of the California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans, and the Executive Director of the California Public Utilities Commission. With that, to begin this morning's sessions, I would like to introduce Secretary Christina Snyder with the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs. Secretary Snyder.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to learn about the state's Middle Mile Broadband Initiative and how tribes can effectively engage in these processes. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians and the Tribal Affairs Secretary for Governor Gavin Newsom, and lead the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs. Today, I'm joining you from the ancestral homelands of the Patwin peoples. The Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs informs the work of the administration by coordinating and facilitating government-to-government communication and consultation with the 109 tribal governments in California, each of which have diverse needs and priorities, and many of which are situated in historically underserved areas for broadband and infrastructure. Because of the unique challenges California tribal nations and citizens face in accessing sufficient broadband to meet the growing demands of a more internet-based society, economy, and community care network, the office is also a member of the California Broadband Council on the state's Broadband for All efforts to help inform their work as they pursue digital equity across California. The Newsom administration and the state's Broadband for All program is committed to collaborating with tribal nations to address connectivity and digital equity needs in tribal lands in Indian country. This has been the foundation of Broadband for All. We work closely with the Broadband Council to establish the state's California Tribal Broadband Connectivity Partnership Summit and Tribal Broadband for All Roundtable in May 2022. We're also working closely with CDT, CPUC, and other state agencies over this next year and beyond to ensure that the state's Broadband for All program and the state's Digital Equity Plan are closely aligned, sensitive to, and developed in collaboration with sovereign tribal nations to address digital equity needs. With that in mind, I encourage you to engage freely with the state folks present and follow up as needed to better understand not only how your nation or community might benefit from the Middle Mile build-out, but also to inform the state of how to properly, respectfully, and equitably engage with your tribal government to ensure that we are fully living up to our commitment to work in a mutually collaborative manner with every tribe in the state. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing more about your needs and priorities in this process as we move through today's agenda. And I believe I'll hand it off to Director Bailey Crimmins.
Thank you, Secretary Snyder. Good morning. I am truly honored to be here with you today, talking about an essential topic at the top of all of our minds, broadband for all. I am Leanna Bailey Crimmins, Director of the Department of Technology, the Chair of the Middle Mile Advisory Committee, and the California Broadband Council. Just a reminder of a very sobering statistic. 28% of tribal lands do not have modern broadband services of 100 megabits per second. And millions of state residents lack access to connectivity, devices, skills necessary to access essential services and realize social and economic benefits. Our goal is not only to provide connectivity, but affordable connectivity. Broadband for All is Governor Gavin Newsom's commitment to closing the digital divide and bringing internet services to unserved and underserved houses, businesses, communities, and tribal communities. In June 2021, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Senate Bill 156 into law to construct the Open Access Middle Mile Broadband Network. The outcome is that the internet service providers will now have the needed infrastructure to connect last mile to homes and to businesses. CDT and our partners that you will hear from today have worked at breakneck speeds to deliver many firsts. The Middle Mile Advisory Committee first met in August of 2021, so just a few months after the Senate bill was signed into law. And then our first 18 middle mile locations were announced November 2021. And then a full statewide network map of 10,000 miles was released in June of 2022. Good news is that this past October, we installed our first middle mile fiber connectivity in Poway, which is in San Diego County, and the pace has not stopped. In fact, this last month, we put an entire system out to bid to get the construction companies to give us ideas of how to make sure that the dollar spreads as far as possible so that we make our objectives and meet our timelines. And in January, which we're in mid-month, we expect to make some key decisions on those implementation plans. And so we need to be able to help our state determine the best way to using those federal dollars to make sure access, affordability, adoption, and digital equity and inclusion is met and our objectives are seen to fruition. We look forward to collaborating with the tribal nations to ensure that the state's digital equity plan aligns with needs of tribal communities. In closing, thank you for the honor of speaking with you today. And now I'd like to turn it over to, and welcome Director Tony Tavares from Caltrans.
Thank you very much, Director Bailey Crimmins. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Tony Tavares, the Director for the California Department of Transportation, and it's quite an honor to be here to speak with you this morning about the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative during this regional tribal engagement session. We are extremely grateful for your participation and know your time is valuable, so we do want to be mindful of that. The digital divide and the resulting inequities have been a focus for decades and a challenge we have long worked to close. This effort became even more critical during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it really reinforced our reliance on high-speed internet while also further highlighting the lack of equity in access to broadband throughout the state. Through the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, we are prioritizing bringing reliable high-speed internet service to disadvantaged and unserved and underserved communities. We're proud to support the California Department of Technology's efforts to create this middle mile network, the physical infrastructure needed to enable internet connectivity for homes, businesses, and community institutions throughout California, such as schools, libraries, hospitals, and medical facilities. Once fully constructed, the Middle Mile Broadband Network will serve as the backbone infrastructure to bring high-speed internet to as many Californians as possible. And this initiative is a significant and ambitious statewide undertaking as we have a very short amount of time to fully construct the entire network. Caltrans has been tasked to deliver the 10,000 mile Middle Mile Broadband Network infrastructure along with along key corridors of the state highway system under the direction and oversight of the California Department of Technology. This means that Caltrans is responsible for the completion of all project level environmental studies, compliance documentation, design, and construction of the middle mile broadband network projects in all 12 of our districts. And for these projects, districts will continue outreach to culturally affiliated tribes for project level consultations. Some tribal governments may have already been in communication with our districts, and we encourage you to continue that communication. With respect to broadband, tribes are considered unserved, and an unserved or underserved area has households that do not reliably have a download internet speed of at least 25 megabits per second and upload internet speeds of at least 3 megabytes per second. According to the California Public Utilities Commission, 25% of Californians who are unserved are within 10 miles of federally recognized tribal lands. Caltrans looks forward to our continued collaboration with tribal cultural leaders through early coordination, engagement, and consultation to promote the protection of tribal heritage and meaningful historic preservation outcomes. We recognize the best project solutions only happen when strong tribal, regional, and local government relationships are maintained to allow us to leverage everyone's input, ideas, and resources. Our goal is that meetings like this and regular communication and coordination with our Caltrans tribal relations staff will allow us to work collaboratively to best consider and address the needs of all tribal nations. We appreciate this opportunity to share more with you about the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative and how we can engage on this important endeavor. We know there may be a number of questions and potential challenges ahead, but we see the vital role broadband plays in our lives and the value in what we are doing. With school, work, and healthcare increasingly or completely available online, the ability for people to access and use broadband could be the difference between being able to fully engage in life or being cut off. While Caltrans is typically about roads and highways, we are ultimately about connecting people. And that is also what the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative is, connecting communities and bringing opportunities for economic prosperity to all Californians. We look forward to enhancing our partnership and our collaboration with all of our tribal governments. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to engage with you this morning. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to the Executive Director of the California Public Utilities Commission, Ms. Rachel Peterson.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Director Tavares, as well to Secretary Snyder and Director Bailey Crimmins for the invitation to join you today. Hello to all the tribal representatives who've joined us as well. I'm very pleased to be here in support of the partnership between the statewide Middle Mile Project and our Last Mile programs. We are working together to bring this once-in-a-generation funding to California to build internet infrastructure. I am Rachel Peterson. I am the Executive Director of the California Public Utilities Commission. Our agency's mission is to regulate utilities so that people across California have access to clean, affordable, reliable utility services. The CPUC has a broad portfolio in electric and gas policy and regulation, safety, water, transportation, and as I'll talk about later in this agenda, we have communications programs as well. These are Last Mile and other programs that directly impact your lives in Indian country. I thank you for coming today to hear about these initiatives because the pandemic definitely ended the debate over whether broadband is a necessity, and nowhere has that been more clear than where you are. Since the state legislature and the governor enacted Senate Bill 156 in 2021, alongside the $3.2 billion for Middle Mile, we've also invested over $2.75 billion for Last Mile programs. These new programs have an emphasis on empowering tribes and local governments to solve the digital divide. We think that helping your initiatives and supporting your partnerships is critical to getting people connected in areas of the state where traditional internet service providers will not go and where mobile coverage is not as good. Our programs at the CPUC are designed to help you get there, and I hope you'll be able to tune in for the entire program to hear our last mile discussion towards the end. Thank you again for your time, and we at the CPUC look very much forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you, and back to you, Adriana.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for the welcoming remarks. With that, if you will advance to the next slide. We are joined today by a number of executives from our districts. We are joined today by Richard Mullen, who is the Deputy District 1 Director for Program Project Management, David Moore, who is the District 2 Director, Amarjeet Benapal, who is the District 3 Director, and Dina Eltawanzi, who is the District 4 Director. And we're going to have some brief opening comments and remarks from them. Richard?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. First off, it's great to be a part of this group and sharing ideas and being able to work on getting the broadband to the underserved and tribal areas. As you said, my name is Richard Mullen. I'm the Deputy District 1 Director for District 1. Our district covers Del Norte, Humboldt, Mendocino, and Lake counties along the North Coast. In our district, we have a significant amount of federally registered tribes, and I myself am a member of the Yurok tribe with ancestors from the Karuk tribe also. So being a part of this effort and partnering with the CDT has been a good effort and an honorable one. I know I have many family members that over the years have had to travel from their homes to a centralized area anywhere from 10 to 15 miles just to get to a computer for that matter, but sometimes to get their broadband service to just apply for colleges. I'd like to say that in our district, we have approximately 785 broadband miles that we're working on. And of those, we're approximately 100 miles are within tribal lands. Things that we have to work with are in partnering are identifying the cultural areas, because within our right of way within District 1, most of these areas are very narrow highways with little shoulder through narrow, rugged, mountainous corridors. We have bridges, very shallow culverts, and areas of geotechnical unstable areas that require good partnerships with the tribes and other agencies, as well as fishing, wildlife, coast commission, and areas like that. So in concluding, I'm just very honored to be a part of this effort. We look forward to hearing questions and being able to partner with the tribal leaders amongst our area. And I'll pass it back to you, Adriana.
Thank you, Richard. I would now like to hand it over to Dave Moore, the District 2 Director. Dave? I know Dave was on just a moment ago, but he may be encountering some Wi-Fi challenges this morning.
How's this, Adriana? Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Dave Moore, District 2 Director. A little bit about District 2. We do cover the 7 northeastern counties here in California. Lassen, Plumas, Modoc, Siskiyou, Shasta, Tehama, and Trinity counties. A very large district, one of the largest in the state. There's nearly 28,000 square miles, and it's mostly rural in nature once you get outside of the I-5 area. In this case, we're looking at about 1,300 miles or a little less than 1,300 miles of middle mile broadband network that we will be overseeing and installing Most of those will be along these 2-lane conventional highways serving those rural communities that were previously talked about. A little bit, there are several tribal groups, almost 30 tribal groups here in District 2, with 16 of those that are federally recognized. Caltrans, alongside CDT, will continue to actively work with all the local tribes to examine opportunities, solve issues, and reduce and eliminate worries that may arise with these projects, as well as continue to engage in outreaching efforts, hoping to avoid potential conflicts wherever possible, and including the tribes in those discussions as we deliver these projects. We look forward to seeing the success and hopefully bringing that broadband access to all the communities out there across the districts. Thanks. Adriana?
Great. Thank you. And we are also joined today by District 3 Director Amarjeet Benapal. Amarjeet?
Thank you, Adriana. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for actually allowing us the opportunity to join you today. It's been certainly a pleasure and an honor to be actually having the discussion, and not only from state government perspective, but also trying to make sure we are engaging our tribal governments in this such a monumental task which we are here to accomplish, to provide the broadband connectivity to all Californians. In District 3, we actually have 11 counties, mostly along I-5. We got Glen, Colusa, Yolo, and Sacramento. And on the northerly side, we got Butte, Sierra, and Nevada. In the Central District 3, we got Yuba and Sutter. And on the southerly side, we have El Dorado and Placer counties. We are flanked up on to the westerly side by District 1 and northerly side by District 2. And southwesterly by District 4, which you will be hearing shortly, and then also by District 10 to the southeasterly side. But with the 11 counties, we actually are going to be able to accomplish almost 982 miles of broadband within our state highway system to provide this connectivity. We wanted to make sure that not only we actually have our preliminary work, which is underway by our environmental staff, we are going to be taking on the detailed studies from cultural perspective in springtime. And as we embark upon the construction aspect, we wanted to make sure we're working with our tribal governments on the monitoring aspect during the construction phase to avoid or minimize any kind of impacts to our resources, which we wanted to be very respectful of. And this process, during all of these process, we wanted to make sure we actually have an open engagement with all of you, and our DNECs are always available from District 1, 2, and 3, able to assist and answer any questions at any time. So please don't hesitate to contact us during this meeting, but more importantly, after this meeting, because most of the heavy lifting is going to be taking place after we are done with this conversation, which is a very important conversation, but we need to make sure our team members are able to work with our tribal members to accomplish what we need to complete over the next couple of years. So look forward to our ongoing partnership and conversations, and then look forward to any of the questions which might be coming up during our conversation today. So with that, Adriana, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amarjeet. And with that, we will now hand it over to our remaining district, District 4 Director, Dina El-Tawanzi. Dina?
Good morning, everyone. I'm really honored to be here and look forward to enhancing this partnership. My name is Dina El-Tawanzi, and I serve as the Caltrans Bay Area District Director. The Bay Area District covers 9 counties. We've got Solano, Sonoma, Napa, Marin to the north, San Francisco and San Mateo to the west, and Santa Clara County to the south, and then Contra Costa and Alameda County to the east. District 4 is tasked with putting in 922 miles of broadband middle miles network infrastructure. We have bundled these into 128 segments that are grouped into 43 projects. We really look forward to working with all of you during the construction of these projects. A lot of these projects are already in the environmental phase as we are clearing them right now, and we look forward to having them in construction as soon as possible. Our ultimate deadline, of course, is to complete all this work no later than December 2026. As we work through these project challenges and opportunities, we look forward to engaging very closely with your tribal members and make sure that the communication is flowing on a continuous basis. As Amarjeet mentioned, not only through this forum, but please feel free to reach out to any of us at any time if you have any questions, concerns, or anything on your mind related to any of this work that we are going through. We look forward to successful completion of these projects, and we look forward to continued engagement with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. I would like to thank all of our executive leadership from Caltrans, as well as the leadership from the Office of Tribal Affairs, from California Department of Technology, as well as the CPUC. So appreciate the welcome. I do need to make one announcement that for some folks, Q&A may not be appearing on your screen. So given that, if as we go through the presentations, if folks have questions, please raise your hand and we will call on you to ask your question. Additionally, throughout the presentation, you will see a number of email addresses, contact information, as well as the outreach that the district directors and the district leaderships have just extended. So with that, if we can go to the next slide, please. And I will hand this over to Scott Adams, who's the Deputy Director for the Broadband and Digital Literacy Office at the California Department of Technology. Scott?
Thank you, Adriana. And just want to say thanks to all of the previous state leaders who provided comment. As Adriana said, my name is Scott Adams. I'm the Deputy Director of Broadband and Digital Literacy within the Department of Technology, and our office really works to coordinate the state's Broadband for All program and initiatives through the California Broadband Council and the Middle Mile Advisory Committee. Our goal here today is to really work with you all and enhance the understanding and awareness of the Broadband for All program, and to grow our partnership and collaboration with the tribal nations here in California, and really stress that we're committed to assisting and addressing connectivity and digital equity needs on tribal lands in Indian country. While today the focus is going to be on the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, we always want to make sure that we provide context of the entire Broadband for All program and the other initiatives. Could you please change the slide? Great. I think as Director Tavares said, we really wanted to stress that in today's internet and technology dependent society, the ability to access and use broadband is the difference between being able to fully engage in life and being cut off. Next slide, please. And as previous speakers had mentioned, Broadband for All is the governor's commitment and the state's overarching program to closing the digital divide on tribal lands and throughout the state. And this program is really designed to, address 4 different components. That's access, making sure that there is infrastructure out to provide and deploy services throughout the state and on tribal lands, to address affordability, so that service that is empowered is affordable to all users, to work to increase the adoption of both internet service and other technologies, and then ultimately create pathways to digital literacy and further enable digital inclusion, which means access to essential services, education, and really making sure that we do all we can to support residents on tribal lands being able to fully exercise the social and economic benefits of being online. Next slide, please. So this slide here is really just intended to demonstrate both the evolution and the complexity of the state's Broadband for All program. What is really unique to the state is that the Broadband Council was established in 2010, and it's a multi-agency coordinated effort. The Department of Technology, the Public Utilities Commission, Caltrans, and the Office of Tribal Affairs are all members of that entity, and you know, for over a decade have worked to promote broadband deployment and adoption throughout the state and on tribal lands and on and unserved communities as determined by the Public Utilities Commission. As all of us learned during the pandemic, you know, significant inequities were you know, both amplified as part of the digital divide and exacerbated. So Executive Order in -7320, or the governor's broadband executive order, was implemented in 2020 to address those, and directed the Broadband Council to develop a statewide broadband action plan, which was done in just 4 months during the pandemic, and completed in December of 2020. And that plan really identified and assigned responsibilities to a number of state entities that, you know, these actions, when completed, could really, you know, move the ball forward on closing the digital divide. What the next development was Senate Bill 156 in 2021, really historic legislation that both the legislature and the governor passed, that established both the framework and the structure, and also tremendous amount of funding to establish the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, which you'll hear about, and the last mile programs that are both complementary, and, you know, the CPUC will talk more about those. Lastly, given the aims of Broadband for All, we are doing everything we can at the state to leverage, you know, the state's fair share of over $65 billion in new funding that was outlined as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in 2021. The yellow boxes at the bottom of the slide are a number of those programs. The Affordable Connectivity Program is a residential subsidy. Then the Digital Equity Act programs and the Broadband Equity Access and Employment. We'll talk a little bit about that. We are also committed to helping support you know, our Tribal Nation partners in both increasing awareness and applying for the third programs indicated in the yellow buckets on the right. Next page, please. Real quick, just wanted to focus that the goals of the state under Broadband for All were outlined in the action plan, and those are that all residents in California and those on tribal lands have access to high performance broadband at home, schools, libraries, and businesses, that all those folks have access to affordable broadband and necessary devices, and that those folks have access to training and support to enable digital inclusion. Next slide, please. One thing we would like to flag for you is, in addition to the investments of SB 156, the next year, both the Department of Technology and the PUC are going to be doing extensive planning and to develop both the BEAD 5-year action plan and a digital equity plan to determine how the state will spend its share of well over a combined $45 billion through the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment program and the Digital Equity Planning Capacity Grants. Wanted to make sure to stress that we are eagerly, you know, wanting to partner with you and your tribal nations on developing these plans to help address the needs on your lands. Next slide, please. As far as the joint planning process that will occur on the Digital Equity Plan and be leveraged to support the PUC's process, we've established a statewide planning group. Those will have virtual meetings. We've developed outcome area working groups. We'll conduct a statewide digital equity survey and surveys. We'll be conducting local and regional outreach events, and we would very much like to engage with you and your nations at these meetings, and then do ongoing statewide public engagement. Next slide, please. So we've added a link here, and we would encourage you or the appropriate designees from your tribal nation to go and tell us how you would like to participate. We strongly urge you to do so. We understand that we've shared a ton of information today, and we will share a lot more on these related and complementary programs. We just want to stress that we're eager to partner with you to align, and we know that assistance is necessary to navigate all these programs and to figure out how they fit together. We are committed to doing that, in partnership with you all to support the broadband and digital equity needs of tribal nations and those residents on tribal lands. And thank you very much. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Scott. Next slide, please. I would now like to introduce Mark Monroe, who's the Deputy Director, to provide an overview of the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. Mark?
All right, yes, thank you. Thank you, Scott, and good morning to all of our participants. I'm Mark Monroe, the Deputy Director for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative program here at CDT. If you want to jump to the next slide here. As has been noted, the 2021 and 2022 budget packages provided a total of $3.8 billion in primarily federal American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds, for CDT to develop a statewide middle mile network along the state highway system to connect the state's unserved and underserved communities. This is in addition to the $2.75 billion the package provided to support last mile connectivity that Executive Director Peterson has noted. Success of the MMBI depends heavily on Caltrans doing the pre-construction work, such as permitting and design, as well as construction contracting and project oversight work during the construction. Based on a robust public input process, CDT worked with the California Public Utilities Commission and the third-party administrator Golden State Net to develop the map we see here, which reflects MMBI network development along 10,000 miles of Caltrans overall 15,000 miles. Some of the challenges we want everybody to be aware of include, first of all, costs. Based on the estimates available, the $3.8 billion that has been provided, while significant, is not expected to be enough funding for the state to build the entire network. And similarly, in terms of the schedule, the federal timeframes relative to the ARPA funds are not consistent with the way that Caltrans would normally approach its transportation projects. In terms of the federal funds, the ARPA funding, they must be under contract by December of 2024, and the work has to be completed and the contracts liquidated by December of 2026. So very challenging timeframes for a 10,000-mile public works project. To mitigate against these challenges, we anticipate IRU leases of existing infrastructure will be needed. And CDT is currently assessing the availability and affordability of existing infrastructure for lease, since it remains our goal to reach all 10,000 miles and the associated unserved and underserved communities. To meet the federal timeframes, it was important following completion of the map to have Caltrans begin its permitting and design work as early as possible on all of the potential miles, which was why we worked to release the full 10,000 mile map this past May. And we have also been working with Caltrans to find ways to expedite its state and federal permitting efforts. The MMBI project is intended to connect unserved and underserved communities throughout the state, and we are happy to have the opportunity to meet today to discuss the potential benefits of the MMBI network project to California's tribal communities and to talk through approaches to system development, in particular as it relates to tribal lands. Next slide. As Director Bailey Crimmins has noted, system construction has already begun in San Diego County and Poway. This is an example of some early Dig Smart opportunities that Caltrans has been exploring, where fiber infrastructure can be added to existing transportation projects. But transportation projects are usually not in the scale or magnitude that we need to do for this MMBI project. So more broadly, we wanted to talk through the primary construction approaches that we are using. SB 156 provided some alternatives to the Caltrans standard design bid build approach. These include a construction manager general contractor, where Caltrans will bring on a contractor early in the design process to help design something that can be built quickly and work and efficiently and hopefully cost effectively. And then the other one is job order contracting, and this allows the state to go out and get bids. You can see here, this is identified here in blue, where allows the state to go out and get bids on a number of projects, or on areas rather, and without necessarily committing to having to build all of those areas. But it helps us to understand where we need to build, or how much it's going to cost in the various sections. And then it really allows the construction companies to mobilize staff and equipment as we move forward here to start construction earlier. I'm going to move to the next slide. So CDT and Caltrans are currently reviewing bids from several major contract solicitations that we released towards the end of 2022. These include the first one here, which is we call it an RFI squared. It's really a solicitation for solutions. And what we did is go out to industry and say, well, we have 10,000 miles. While we're exploring what it will take for Caltrans to build all 10,000 miles, we're interested in any existing infrastructure that we might be able to lease, any potential opportunities for joint builds with partners, industry partners, or any partners really, where we can share the construction costs, which make up the majority of the cost of the network, as well as co-location facilities for our electronics. Similarly, we have, in reference to the job order contracts, we have went out to bid for 5,100 miles of job order contract construction. And so that is something we're also reviewing. We've received bids on those, and when we're just in the process of going through those currently. And as well as Caltrans has, with their experience having used CMGC contracts, they've gone out for the districts have developed or are going out for 1,700 miles there. So you can see that with we're at 6,800 miles of construction contracts that are being entertained currently. So try to move this project along to really meet those federal deadlines. Next slide. Here you can see what Caltrans has identified in terms of where the system is expected to be located. While it is intended to connect communities, it doesn't necessarily go through all communities. We want all of the state's tribal communities to know where the network will be and how it can benefit these tribal communities. And next, Caltrans is going to walk us through its processes in working with the tribes and developing the project. But before we move on, I'm going to go to the next slide. Here you can see the schedule used at the MMAC meetings. We encourage everyone to attend these quarterly MMAC meetings. The next one will be held this next Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning online. These are held virtually, and they really are helpful in providing the public and anybody who's interested a way of tracking the progress of the project. Given this timeline, CDT will be working with Caltrans and Golden State Net to optimize the network and in evaluating the bids we just talked about for leases, for joint builds, for co-location, for the various construction types, to make key decisions based on the bids we've received, and use the available funding as effectively as possible to bring middle mile connection to the state's unserved and underserved communities. With that, before we turn it over to Caltrans, we'll open this up to any questions. Adriana?
Mark, I'm not seeing any hands up. So appreciate the overview of the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. And I will now introduce Janice Benton, who is the Assistant Deputy Director for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative at Caltrans, and Hardeep Takar, who is the Program Director also with Caltrans. Janice?
Right. Thank you, Adriana. Good morning, everybody. And as Adriana says, my name is Janice Benton. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director over the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative for Caltrans. And then joining me also is Hardeep Takar, the Program Director here at Caltrans for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. So next slide. So it is my pleasure to be here to talk about the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative and the ambitious effort to promote the digital equity and inclusion. Today is about sharing information about this opportunity and making sure you all have the background on the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. And specifically, what is the project? What's the type of work that's going to be happening? And how can you engage? This initiative is a significant undertaking, and as many of the leaders have already mentioned, we'll need the partnership of all of our stakeholders and partners to meet this challenge. So next slide. It's been shared, the full system design map for the broadband middle mile initiative includes 10,000 miles of the proposed build that spans the entire state. To put this in perspective, here at Caltrans, we own and operate about 15,000 miles. And with this initiative, we are adding broadband to almost 2/3 of that. So through this initiative, we are taking a comprehensive and long-term approach to tackling the broadband infrastructure deficiencies, connecting Californians and meeting the broadband infrastructure needs. So next slide. So the broadband initiative, as Mr. Monroe has mentioned, has a very aggressive timeline to meet the 10,000 mile network goal and ensure we're maximizing the use of the federal dollars. Because the funding is through the Federal American Rescue Plan with the Treasury Department, the funds requires us to get all of the work started in construction by December 2024, and then complete that construction and close out those contracts by December 2026. So we're working closely with the California Department of Technology, who is the lead agency and the project owner, to ensure we're prepared to, as we navigate the challenges of this effort. Now I will hand it over to Hardeep Takar, the program director, to share more details on how we plan to deliver the projects. Hardeep?
Thank you, Janice. Good morning, everyone. I will be covering the details on the project development process and how we plan to deliver these projects. The Broadband Middle Mile Initiative is an example of how Caltrans is not doing business as usual. We have been given flexibility to accomplish this 10,000 mile goal, and in the standard project delivery process, which is linear, with each phase being allocated and then completed prior to the beginning of the next phase. Instead, we are streamlining the delivery process to create efficiencies in design, permitting, and contracting, which allows these pre-construction activities to be completed concurrently. Our goal is to minimize project footprint and avoid and minimize impacts to environmental resources by staying engaged with the resource agencies, with tribal regional governments to exercise avoidance and minimization measures during the project development process. And this will involve using construction means and methods that I will cover in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So Caltrans has developed plans, details, and specifications to install conduit and fiber optic cable that cover the following construction methods, which include plowing, trenching, and trenchless installation construction means and methods. Typically, the plan is to install 4 2-inch conduits or 3 2-inch conduits, which will be installed in trenches that are typically 6 to 12 inches wide and 24 to 42 inches in depth, depending on the site conditions. And then, as I mentioned, details have been developed for work, including trenching on the roadside, trenching in pavement, and in shoulder, and in plowing as well. And this work will also include building 21,000 walls every 2,500 feet approximately to pull fiber along the state highway system right away, and building splice walls, which will be located every 15,000 feet along the right of way to serve as connection points to allow access to broadband providers. We will also be building 200 concrete network hub shelters for fiber optic signal regeneration, which will be strategically positioned every 50 miles along the right of way, where buried fiber optic cable is transferred above ground to connect to devices to boost and enhance the data signals. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, I will be covering the description and the typical application and operation for the construction means and methods. In this case, plowing involves using a vibratory plow to create a narrow slit in soil as the plow moves quickly, resulting in minimal soil disturbance and requiring an effortless cleanup following the operation. These applications typically include areas where installation is required in a soil surface that includes an uneven, wet, or dry terrain. We have a tight schedule, a long haul, and will require restoration following completion of work. Next slide, please. Traditional trenching is common for cross-country installations and may affect traffic movement and is slower than plowing. Trench and pavement will be allowed in narrow trenches on shoulder and pavement to overcome width and depth limitations encountered at locations where we need to avoid impacts to environmental resources and overcome right-of-way restrictions. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates micro trenching, which is also a type of trench and pavement. It involves cutting a narrow trench, typically 3 to 6 inches wide, into the asphalt or concrete pavement, and trench depths typically below the upper layer, but shallower than most utilities. And operations will involve vacuum excavation units to simultaneously remove soils. And it's primarily used to install fiber optic cables. Next slide, please. Horizontal drilling applications may include long overhauls over most terrains, including rocky ground conditions, overpasses, embankments, side hills, and river crossings. Operations will need to consider entrance and exit pits, pilot hole, reaming and swab passes, a sound curtain for noise mitigation, and site restoration when the work is done. Next slide, please. We will also be implementing stitch boring, a type of horizontal drilling operation may also be utilized. This uses pneumatic piercing tools to shoot from one small pit to the next. And this slide lists the typical equipment and materials used in the horizontal drilling operations. Mostly over short distances if we can get to cross pavement. Next slide, please. For trenchless installations using jack and bore operations, typical applications will include roadways and railroad crossings where a casing is required, and in situations where horizontal directional drilling is not feasible. But similar to horizontal drilling operations, this will need to consider entrance and exit pits, pilot hole reaming and swab passes, pipe casing, and site restoration when the work is done. So very similar to horizontal directional drilling, except that we will be needing casings in this case. Again, thank you, and we appreciate the opportunity to share information with you about the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative. And I will pass it back to Adriana at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Hardeep and Janice. If there are questions, we will pause, and please feel free to raise your hand. If you do see the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, please, you're more than welcome to post a question there. But we will hold for a moment just to see if there are any questions regarding how we're going to be delivering the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. I am not seeing any hands raised, so thank you for that presentation. Next slide, please. I would like to hand it over to Catherine Rose and Sarah Allred with the California Department of Transportation with Caltrans. Catherine is the office chief for the headquarters Cultural Studies Office. Sarah Allred is the statewide Native American coordinator with the Caltrans headquarters Native American Cultural Studies branch. And I am seeing a couple of hands. So Catherine, Sarah, if you don't mind holding for just a moment. Nick, you have your hand up?
And then it was Elias, it looked like as well.
There, and to that extent, Elias did have his hand up, and then there are some questions in the Q&A as far as what we can see.
Okay, I am not seeing any. Would you please make sure that I'm listed as a host so I can see those?
Absolutely.
So my apologies. And oh, we have 3 questions. Okay, so nobody escapes too quickly without some questions, and we do appreciate these. So we do have a question from Ken Sandusky with the Modoc Nation. And he is asking, is the Modoc Nation one of the tribes on your list? And Ken, if you want to expand on that.
The District 2 director was speaking about what 30 tribes that they have on a list, and I just wanted to make sure we were one of those.
Yeah, this is Dave Moore. I believe you are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And let's see. I have a question about how the let's see. Actually, let me circle back with this one. But in the meantime, I will, if we can go continue with Catherine and Sarah. Catherine?
Thanks, Adriana. Yeah, good morning and welcome everyone. As others have mentioned, we know your time is valuable and really appreciate you being here. My name is Catherine Rose, as Adriana mentioned. I'm the acting office chief for the Cultural Studies Office headquarters. And the Cultural Studies Office is responsible for developing, implementing, and monitoring cultural resource management for the department. I'm going to let Sarah introduce herself.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Sarah Allred. I'm the statewide Native American coordinator in Caltrans headquarters Division of Environmental Analysis Cultural Studies Office. I work on programs and policies related to Caltrans consultation with tribal governments regarding the effects of transportation development on cultural heritage and the environment. And I also administer the Cultural Environmental Subcommittee to the Caltrans Native American Advisory Committee. It's great to be here today. Thank you all for taking the time to join us. Catherine and I are going to share this presentation to talk about the cultural environmental studies for the middle mile projects in the districts. And I'm going to turn it back over to Catherine, and I will chime back in later in this presentation.
Thanks, Sarah. You can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So the previous presentations provided an overview of Broadband for All in California, what the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative is, and Caltrans' role in the project delivery process. So in this presentation, as Sarah mentioned, we're going to focus on the environmental and cultural resource studies process and Caltrans' consultation with tribes in that context. The map you see here is an overview of the 12 Caltrans districts relative to the statewide middle mile network. And obviously, tribal ancestral areas do not necessarily coincide with district or political boundaries. So tribes may be working with one or more districts depending on your individual areas of concern. Each district is going to be responsible for the design, environmental review, and compliance, permitting, and construction of the middle mile broadband projects in their respective areas. And each district has its own unique middle mile broadband delivery challenges, as we heard earlier, depending on factors such as topography, the urban or rural nature of the setting, and types of environmental sensitivities. Go to the next slide, please. So, mentioned earlier in the presentations, delivery of the middle mile broadband network is being accelerated and design will be environmentally driven. This is to promote avoidance of resources, which means that the early identification of sensitive cultural and environmental areas is a key objective in the design and delivery of the middle mile broadband projects. Even though the delivery process is being accelerated, Caltrans is still responsible for complying with all state and federal environmental laws and procedures, including outreach and consultation with the culturally affiliated California Native American tribes. The Begin Environmental milestone marks the point at which Caltrans formally initiates environmental studies for an individual project, including the initiation of outreach to culturally affiliated tribes. And Caltrans will conduct outreach to both federally recognized and non-federally recognized tribes. And initial outreach efforts in the districts will be directed to tribal leadership and the tribe's designated cultural environmental experts. Depending on ancestral territories, tribes should be receiving and or will receive communications from one or more districts seeking consultation regarding any cultural and environmental concerns related to specific middle mile broadband project areas. Tribes may be receiving communication in the form of emails, letters, phone calls, and meetings. Because middle mile broadband projects are being accelerated and prioritized at Caltrans, there is potential that districts might be asking for a faster turnaround on consultation requests. This will help to inform design on avoidance measures for cultural and environmental resources. Next slide, please. Each of the middle mile broadband projects in the districts will be assessed regarding their potential to affect the environment. As is typical for Caltrans projects, cultural resources studies will follow a general sequence that involves the identification of sensitive resources and an evaluation of their significance in close consultation with the culturally affiliated tribes. If significant tribal resources and or sensitive areas are identified within a project area, Caltrans environmental and design staff will work with the consulting tribes to avoid those areas to the fullest extent possible. The various design options that Hardeep presented earlier, such as plowing, trenching in the pavement or shoulders, micro-trenching, trenchless installation, and horizontal directional drilling, provide some insight into potential engineering solutions to avoiding and minimizing impacts to resources. If there are circumstances in which the avoidance of a resource is not feasible, Caltrans consults with the tribes to minimize impacts and develop a suitable and appropriate mitigation plan that is reflective of the nature and scope of the impacts. Minimization efforts may also include micro-trenching, horizontal drilling, directional boring, trenchless installation, and plowing. Each project and circumstance is different, so the nature of mitigation for an individual resource is based on consultation with the affected tribes. As mentioned earlier, since the design of the middle mile broadband is environmentally led, the early identification of sensitive cultural and environmental areas is a key objective. This can be facilitated by good communication and coordination between tribes and Caltrans environmental staff. Next slide, please. Sarah.
All right, thank you, Catherine. All right, so given that the design of the middle mile project is being heavily guided by early identification and avoidance of cultural and environmental resources, we just wanted to share or call attention to some information that might be useful for communication and coordination among tribes and Caltrans staff. First is the Native American Cultural Studies Branch webpage. Provides a variety of links to information for tribal governments, including the department's statewide tribal relations org chart and the statewide contact list for Native American coordinators. Next slide, please. So the contact list for the District Native American Coordinators, otherwise known as DNACs, provides the most current points of contact for tribes regarding cultural and environmental issues in each of the 12 districts. We have had a lot of staff changes and movement lately, so be sure to check the list regularly for updates. I know that many of the cultural and environmental experts with the tribes already have well-established relationships with their District Native American coordinators, but for those who are not familiar, the District Native American coordinators can assist and guide tribes to the proper sources of information within our organization, depending on the nature of the concern. And as always, another point of contact includes those of us in the headquarters Cultural Studies Office and Native American Cultural Studies Branch. Next slide, please. And the Caltrans Tribal Relations org chart provides a broader overview of all the designated tribal relations staff in the department, as well as Caltrans executive leadership, both at headquarters and in the districts. The District Native American coordinators and the District Native American liaisons in the planning program are the primary tribal relations staff and key points of contact for tribes in the districts. if there are broad issues that can't be addressed at the staff level, tribal leaders are very much encouraged to seek diplomatic discussions and resolutions with Caltrans executive leadership as needed. Next slide, please. Another important resource is the Caltrans GIS Environmental Library. This is a straightforward, public-facing, interactive map tool on our website that allows users to compare a variety of environmental, political, and infrastructure layers for the entire state, including the state highway system and the planned 10,000-mile middle mile network. So these layers can be assessed or accessed, via the tabs and subtabs to the right hand side of the screen there. And you can easily zoom in to examine your unique area of concern relative to the middle mile network and other aspects of the environment. So I think this GIS library can be very a valuable communication tool for tribes and Caltrans, who are consulting on the middle mile projects, particularly as it relates to those efforts to identify and strategize avoidance of sensitive resources. If you haven't had an opportunity to visit the GIS library, we encourage you to explore it and look at your specific areas of concern relative to the middle mile network. And don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need any assistance with using the GIS library. Next slide, please. Lastly, here, as mentioned earlier, even though the middle mile projects are being expedited, Caltrans will fully comply, as always, with all state and federal environmental and historic preservation laws, policies, procedures. Volume 2 of Caltrans Standard Environmental Reference focuses on how Caltrans conducts cultural resource studies, including the procedures and expectations for consultation with tribes. So as you can see here, there are 6 chapters in Volume 2, as well as a number of exhibits that accompany and complement each chapter. This is an excellent go-to resource for gaining more familiarity with the overall cultural studies process. And of course, we're here and available to answer any questions you may have about that process. Next slide, please. So on that note, we just wanted to leave you with some key contacts who can assist in any environmental or cultural resources inquiries related to the middle mile projects. If these individuals don't have the answers, they can definitely assist you and point you in the right direction. And with that, I would just like to thank you all very much for taking the time to be here for this presentation. I hope this information is helpful. We're happy to take any questions or comments that you may have regarding Caltrans environmental reviews and delivery of the middle mile projects. Thanks again.
Thank you, Sarah and Catherine, and we'll open it up for questions. I think the first question is, will tribes be compensated for the additional work tasks and for cultural monitors that may be needed in various tribal jurisdictions? It would be critical, especially if being asked for an expedited completion date. And this question is from Linnea Jackson. And in advance, I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. It's not unintentional, but being asked about compensation for work.
Do you want to take that, Catherine, or would you like me to?
I think Catherine froze, Sarah, but at least she froze with a smile on her face.
Yes. Yeah, well, I guess the short answer is yes. Monitoring is always project specific and based on consultations with the culturally affiliated tribes for that specific project. And Caltrans standard environmental reference that I had mentioned earlier, volume 2, chapter 3 in particular, provides guidance on how Caltrans integrates traditional knowledge into cultural studies and how tribal expertise is reimbursed. And in addition to chapter 3, I would point people to exhibit 3.3 and exhibit 3.4 as part of chapter 3, volume 2 of the standard environmental reference. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Sarah. And we have a hand from Robert Geary. Robert? And I think you are still on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I did have a couple questions. So one of the things is that I wanted to find out, I know it seems like this has kind of been put on kind of the fast track, I think, for the tribes. I did constantly consult about this. There has been change in staff with Caltrans, and some of the people that I started with are no longer there. I always make it a point to be as proactive as possible. We have some, it's not so great history, I think, with some of the cities and the towns around Lake County here, as far as for fill and what they've been using in and under the roads that they have been doing. There's a known area right there on 53 where they've taken archaeological from an archaeological district, not a site, and used it for fill in those roads. So I guess the question that I have is making sure that we're there, and I've requested this. I've got it from the lower part of the lake, but not the other part. From what I understand, they've actually have done the surveys for those projects, the broadband project on both ends. We are there for the survey part on the south part, but weren't informed about what was happening on the north part of Lake County. And due to those, I had a couple questions due to us being informed about the surveys, not necessarily the construction, because yes, we definitely want to be there for construction, but we also want to make sure that we're there for any surveying that's going to happen to be able to address those concerns. In Lake County, archaeologically, really hot spot, things that are laying above ground that are on top. One of the questions that I asked also was what's going to happen, or what's the curation process or protocols for those items that are found above ground while they're out there, whether it's survey or construction. Has that been set into place? I know we have a treatment protocol that we always try to incorporate into a mitigation measure, but haven't had any answers back to any of those. So I guess one of the things is we want to be a part of the surveying when it's out there, just due to the historic practices, I guess, of the cities and the towns that are here, because archaeological soils have been moved around from place to place. And so we haven't gotten, like I said, and from what I understand, the surveying has been done, is completed on the north end of the lake. So the south end of the lake, I happened to catch, and we got it all situated. We're going to be out there towards the end of this month, I believe. But the north part we missed. We didn't get called for. So we just want to make sure that we're a part of this process, that the tribes are being, contacted about all aspects, I think, that happen with this, just due to a lot of the things that are happening within our counties, and the tribes have that information and that data as far as some of the practices that have been going on. And so for us, it's really an important part to make sure that anything that's going to happen for this project, that we're contacted for and asked to be a part of the process.
I can respond. I think my internet's back working. Sorry about that. Yeah, Robert, thank you so much for your comment. And we definitely agree and want to make sure that the tribes are being contacted for all aspects. So we will, I think, working with your district and making sure that, we communicate to them as well, and you communicate to them about this, and make sure that we're all on the same page there, so that we can make sure you're there when they're doing the survey or all aspects of the identification. I don't know, Sarah, if you had anything else that you wanted to add.
Oh, well, probably to just reiterate what you said, again, thank you for bringing this up. I think it's important to, at least, keep this in the forefront, and that, again, each project is different. So, we're happy to work with you and your district staff with whom you've been working to consult about monitoring needs and participation. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need further assistance.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sarah and Catherine and Robert. Thank you for that question. We will also make sure to put you in contact with the district Native American liaison so we can start to facilitate that conversation and make sure that communication is happening as well. So we will make sure to kind of make that connection. I also wanted to note that Anna Starkey with UAIC posted a question in the chat about putting the link in the adding a link to the GIS library in the chat. I am not sure everybody is having access. We will, however, be sending around the presentation later today, which includes those links. I'm also sending you an email. So I will get that over to you this morning. And with that, I also have a hand from Ken. Ken?
Hi, thank you. Considering current experience with the fiber optics laid in rural Modoc and Siskiyou counties, often these services run right in front of properties, but then aren't offered to local land managers, whether it be tribes or just regular rural community residents. The Modoc Nation has made substantial investments in a property about 10 miles off of State Line Road, and that's shown on your map as one of the areas where this service will be laid. It comes with additional barriers of getting that service to the property to be able to entice tribal members to move and live there. And so I guess just long story short, the suggestion to offer or analyze opportunities to overcome the barriers of getting the service to the property, to the structures itself from those mainline services, down county roads unmaintained in a lot of situations, and even up people's driveways would be an effective way to make sure that rural residents get this service. When it comes by on the highway, often we don't have the ability to tap into it.
And thank you. I appreciate your comments, Ken. And I know that part of our next conversation, our next presentation will be on last mile. And that really is about that, bringing the middle mile and connecting from the middle mile into people's homes. So I think that's a good, Catherine, Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything in response to what Ken indicated. If not, I'm going to leverage that as an opportunity to transition over to last mile. And I see Catherine nodding her head.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good topic for the next presentation.
And Ken, I appreciate your assistance with facilitating and moving us on to that important piece. We are going to take a brief 5-minute break. So if it is 10:21 right now, gives everybody a minute to stretch and stand up. So I will see you all back. We will be back and reconvene about 10:26 for that for the discussion about last mile. Thanks. Well, I believe we have made it past 10:26, gave folks a few extra minutes. And if we could advance the, perfect, thank you. So we are going to resume with, excuse me, words are challenging a little bit. We are going to resume our engagement session, and we are going to focus in on that last mile connection that Ken was just referencing. And we're pleased to be joined today by Rachel Peterson, the Executive Director of the California Public Utilities Commission, and Matt Rantanen with Golden State Network. I also see Eric Hunsinger with Golden State Network on for this section as well. Rachel?
Good morning. Thank you, Adriana. And hello again, everyone. Rachel Peterson with the California Public Utilities Commission. I'm going to speak first, and then I'll hand the mic over to either Matt or Eric for comment and Q&A later on. Okay, if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is the overview of what Kenneth Holbrook and I will present on today. I'm very pleased to be here with our tribal advisor, Ken Holbrook. He's going to speak first about the tribal work that's going on at the CPUC. Then I'll take the mic back and we'll talk about the 5 CPUC programs that are key pieces which are connecting last mile broadband projects. For resources and contacts throughout today and after today, you can always reach out to Ken Holbrook with questions. And we've got Karen Eckersley, a subject matter expert on our tribal programs, on with us today, so she'll help out with Q&A. And then we've got our staff contacts on numerous of our slides, which can be reached out to at any time, statewide broadband at cpuc.ca.gov. Okay, and next slide, please, and I'll turn it over to Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. I'm Kenneth Holbrook, the CPUC Tribal Advisor. I'm honored to be with you today. My contact information is here on the slide, so please do reach out to me if you ever have any questions on this topic or really anything having to do with tribal affairs at CPUC. So this resource slide gives you the links to our tribal advisor and also our tribal liaison office. Our consultation policy has been in place since 2018, and it provides a framework for all of our divisions to establish and maintain effective relationships with tribes while respecting sovereignty. Our tribal office works to provide tribes with information about our programs. We consult with tribes on the development of policies and work to improve relations among tribal governments and the CPUC and its regulated entities. The Tribal Land Transfer Policy prioritizes the transfer of land from investor-owned utilities to Native American tribes with a historical interest in the land. When a utility begins a process of selling off land, the policy creates an expectation that the utility will work with the California Native American Heritage Commission to identify any tribes whose ancestral territory the land is on or adjacent to. Once a utility identifies any interested tribe or tribes, the company is expected to negotiate a transfer to the tribe before putting the land on the open market. This policy, which the CPUC developed after comment from utilities and tribes, furthers the CPUC's goals of recognizing and respecting tribal sovereignty and of returning tribal lands to their rightful owners. We have an open proceeding currently that's been established looking to revise guidelines that were established as part of the policy. So some of you have already been participating in that proceeding over the course of the last year. We certainly encourage all of you to do so. Please reach out to tribaladvisor@cpuc.ca.gov. So that's just the words tribal advisor, no period in the middle. Tribaladvisor@cpuc.ca.gov. For further information about the participating in the proceeding that I spoke about, learning more about the policy, or just connecting with any of our subject matter experts anywhere across the commission. So again, thank you for your time this morning. And Rachel, back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Ken. Can you go to the next slide, please? And here we have links to the proceeding and the policies and the programs that Ken spoke about. All right, now on to our broadband programs. Next slide, please. Okay, so This slide shows an overview of all of our different funding programs for communications infrastructure. We've highlighted here the 5 that I'm going to specifically speak about today because they are key to the last mile. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first one, the Tribal Technical Assistance Program. Pardon me while I get my notes in order here. So we have been conducting countless public hearings, consultations, and workshops around the state. And one thing that we have heard about over the last several years is the problem of capacity within a tribal organization for communications issues. We've heard that often there just aren't enough people or time to perform the research or the study work that one needs for such technical projects. We designed our grant program for you to hire consultants to help you answer these questions about your next steps for improving communications. The program has assisted 40 tribes with over 60 projects to date. We have broad eligibility for this fund, so it is inclusive of California tribes with or without federal recognition. The grants are for up to $150,000 per year per tribe, and we take applications 4 times per year, and we definitely look forward to seeing yours. There's a link to our program page here in the slide deck. Okay, going on to another form of technical assistance. Yes, thank you. Next slide. The broadband package tasked the CPUC with awarding $50 million in technical assistance grants to entities to help them prepare to provide broadband service in their communities. Public entities are broadly eligible, including tribes, cities, and counties. Individual grants are to be no more than $1 million per applicant, and there's an expedited process if the grant request is for $500,000 or less. Tribes have a set aside of $5 million within this fund, and there's about $3 million left in the set aside. These funds are for a range of pre-project costs to deploy last mile broadband infrastructure, and we've listed types of eligible costs here. We began receiving applications in August 2022, and they are currently being accepted. We strongly encourage you to think about your pre-construction broadband work needs and how much of this can be supported by a technical assistance grant. Just very recent news, last week at their voting meeting, our commissioners granted the Yurok Tribe's application for a grant within this program. And we have 3 other tribal applications that our staff are currently evaluating. We've linked our county dashboard map about grants that have been awarded here in the slide deck as well. And there's a program page with more information. Again, any questions for after today can be emailed, or requests for assistance, please email statewidebroadband@cpuc.ca.gov. Okay, next slide, please. This is the big one. Okay, the federal funding account is our biggest infrastructure funding account. It will provide $2 billion in grants for last mile broadband infrastructure projects to connect unserved people and areas in California. To distribute this significant investment fairly and effectively, we at the CPUC designed what we call priority areas. Our goal is to use priority areas to ensure effective and equitable distribution of program funds. Priority areas are geographically defined and are presumed eligible under the federal funding account. Applicants can add or subtract from the areas in their applications. Many of them are in or near tribal lands, and we encourage you to look at the maps and consider applying for the funds. Each priority area was designed to support a sustainable business case for applicants based on network engineering and modeling. The priority areas were developed with the most granular data available when the program rules were adopted, and we are looking to constantly update them as new data becomes available. Next slide, please. The California Advanced Services Fund. For over a decade, the California Advanced Services Fund has provided broadband grants that support a range of investments. Since 2008, we have awarded $327 million in grants for 102 projects. We've listed the type of CASF grants that can be applied for here. They are adoption and digital equity for community-based organizations to help people connect to and use the internet, public and low-income communities grants, public housing and low-income communities grants with free connections to low-income households. The consortia account funds regional broadband consortia who are experts who help service providers and communities access grants. And then finally, these are infrastructure grants as well to pay for infrastructure in areas without access. This does have different eligibility criteria from the federal funding account. All right, next slide, please. And the last program I'll speak about today is the Loan Loss Reserve. This program will assist local governments and nonprofits in securing financing so that they can build out their own last mile infrastructure. It essentially provides collateral to enable better borrowing rates and terms for the bonds that we know many entities will need to issue to deploy this infrastructure. This is a program that is still midstream. We are working on developing the rules for it, and our next step is for a proposed set of rules to be issued for public comment. All right, next slide, please. That concludes my formal remarks. This is a photo of one of our California Advanced Services Fund grantees with their service provider partners. These are representatives from the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District and Hunter Fiber Communications. I believe some of you are on this call. Hello, Ms. Jackson and Mr. Douglas. And I do love this photo because it shows the people who are implementing some of these infrastructure grants, and it shows actually a location where infrastructure has to be located, often in the depths of a building, which is essential to how we're connecting people across California to the internet. All right, thank you so much for joining today, and we're happy to take any questions.
And I do see a question in the Q&A regarding how the middle mile, how that meshes with local tribal rural broadband initiatives and how those are interconnected.
Would you like me to take that?
Sure, Eric, if you can start, and then
Sure.
we can, Karen or I can add in. Thank you.
Sure. From a physical standpoint, first, let me apologize for Matt Rantanen. He wasn't unable to make it today, and I know this is near and dear to his heart. He's been at the center of advising Golden State on tribal initiatives and the important opportunities of engaging with each of you today. So I appreciate the fact that many of you are here today to hear this important message and learn how we might connect your tribal entities to the Middle Mile Network. So at least from a physical standpoint, the folks at the Department of Technologies under the auspice of the CPUC have designed a network that is very different than most traditional commercial networks. And in one key element is that the network philosophy of connection is that we will interconnect at any point to reduce the cost of last mile construction. So the state right now, as you heard from Deputy Director Mark Monroe and other folks, is they're evaluating construction projects to put the middle mile in place. But once it's there, once it is in the ground and available for the state of California, any tribal entity that is ready may interconnect with the network when necessary. And we will do a ring cut. We will do a dedicated splice case for that last mile connection. And if any entity wants, isn't ready today, but might be ready 5 years from now, the fiber will be there available for connection to any entity that wants to connect. And all we will have to do is roll a truck and do a splice cut, and we can interconnect at any point. Again, the philosophy of this network is very different than the standard commercial network, which would protect the network from being cut. This is the complete opposite. The philosophy is to connect all communities across the state of California. And if that doesn't answer the question, please look to Karen or somebody else for more detail.
Eric, thank you for that. It's Rachel. I would just want to reinforce your message, actually. That is exactly the goal with this program and with this partnership, that middle mile and last mile are intended to be connected. Our philosophy is open access, which means access by communities to this core fundamental network that we are in partnership to build. So just a resounding yes to the message you just gave. Thank you.
And Mark, I see that you've turned on your camera and you're off mute, as Karen, as are you. So I don't know if you have some additional items you want to add in response to that question.
Oh, well, I just, other than echo the comments, we're designing the network. We've got, vaults every 2,500 feet. We're designing this network to be, to maximize the availability. So as many communities need to tie in, can tie in. So I just really want to echo Eric's comments.
Thank you. We also have just an anonymous participant noted that thank you for all the good last mile resources. Please also keep in mind the additional barriers to entry tribes face with community projects. Non-tribal applicants should have to show how they are going to overcome systemic and local personnel biases before receiving funding. So that was just posted in the Q&A. Rachel, I see you're off mute.
I'd say thank you for the comment. We'll take that back. Thank you.
And let's see. Perfect. So, and then I see one additional response about just a general comment about since tribes since tribes often don't pay taxes, sometimes they indicated local governments often think tribal communities don't deserve services. So I will just so you have that comment as well, Rachel and Karen. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. And are there any additional questions? I don't see any hands raised. I think all of our questions from the Q&A have concluded. I'm going to pause for just a minute. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Appreciate the opportunity to share more information about the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, how this is being, what it is, how it's being delivered, as well as information on Broadband for All and how we're making those last mile connections. There was a lot of really good information shared. There's a lot of contact information. We will be sharing the presentation later today, so you will have all of those contacts. And folks, I think Robert asked a question, and there was a question from Anna, so you should have received responses to those as well during today's those emails were sent, but please feel free to reach out to us if you have additional questions, and we look forward to continuing to work with you as we move forward to install the Middle Mile Broadband Network. As mentioned, this is the second of 3 regional tribal engagement sessions. So there is the third one that is scheduled for February 2nd. Folks are welcome to attend any and all of those sessions. So we will see you back in a few weeks and continue the conversation. Thank you.